Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Rudy. I'm the senior instruction writer at Golf Digest, where I've been creating magazine stories and video series with coaches and players since 1999. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here today because not only is David Ledbetter is doing this wonderful thing with these series of seminars, but I really get to spend time with a couple of my favorite people today. It's a pleasure to introduce Pia Nilsson and Lynn Marriott. They've both been longtime members of Golf Digest 50 Best Teachers list, but that credential is hardly the most impressive one on their collective resume. I don't even think it's the honor that goes with working with 9 different major championship winners and 4 players who've gone to #1 in the world. If I'm doing the grading, it's the work that Pia and Lynn have done making the process of improvement more enjoyable and approachable for so many players. And it's the effort that they've put into to train hundreds of coaches to be more efficient whole game teachers. And I think that's really an important thing to say. And I think that's what we're going to get into in this conversation today, because there are physical aspects that go to hitting good shots, but there's so many other mental and emotional aspects that go with it that go toward playing well. I'm really lucky to have done many stories with Pia and Lynn over the last 15 years, and I'm excited that you're about to experience some of the positive energy and new ideas that flow when you visit Talking Stick in Scottsdale. So let's get started. Pia and Lynn, how are you today?
We're great. Thanks, Matt.
We're starting to have the good weather here in Arizona, so we're happy about that.
Yeah, and we're excited that's joining us here too.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
It's snowing here in Connecticut, so
Okay.
I'm a little bit jealous, but I know there's a few subjects we want to cover today, but I thought I'd give you a chance here at the beginning to just tell people who might not be completely familiar with what you're about, what Vision 54 is, and what kinds of things you're doing week in and week out.
Yeah.
So, well, I just want to say, a lot of people don't know what the 54 stands for, but it stands for
18 birdies.
Yes.
And we'll come back to that later, because it is a number, and we do think golfers will shoot 54 sometime in the future.
Yeah.
And we've been fortunate to coach a few who have shot 59, but we'll get back to that possibility in thinking with 54.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, but more importantly, as you listen to us and are with us for this hour, is to think about, as Pia said already, the possibilities. So 54 is a number, but metaphorically for us, it's about having a mindset of possibilities. And I'll just say this week, there was a young lady who coaches at University of Oregon. Her name is Monica Vaughn. She shot a 58. And part of that was just going through our Super Coach 54 program. She was able to really kind of dial down her routine to something more simple. And she went out and shot a 58.
Yeah. It was for 71.
Well,
still very good.
And not a 54 yet.
But what we do for any golfer that comes to us, or true players and all of that, our main thing is just so simple, is to help golfers play better on the golf course and enjoy it more. But we don't take those words lightly. We actually mean it. We don't, even if we see something working well on the putting green or driving range, it's not good enough for us. We want to see it function on the golf course, and for most of the players that come to us in competition. So that's our main view, like how's the function when it really matters.
Yeah, well, in fact, we had a couple of top level LPGA players in town the last couple of days, and the coaching was on the golf course, because it always is more real when it's on the golf course.
And actually, anytime we start a golf school, we usually start with 3 questions, and they're simple ones. The answers can only be yes or no. So let's ask that to everybody here.
But I just kind of teed up there, which is, is golf played on the golf course?
So far, from thousands of people, we've always got the yes answer.
Yes.
Second question is, this game played on the course, is it played by human beings?
Oh, yeah.
We always get a yes to that one too.
Yeah, and then we always ask, are you a human being if you're a player? So of course I am.
But then the thing is, so it is a game played on the course by humans. And then we ask, is it variable?
Yeah.
And everybody says yes to that too. So our question is, the way you practice and go about things, are you taking into consideration it's played on the course by humans and it's variable? And what skills do you need to be able to do that well?
So that's really what we're about. And I will just lead into this, is that as we look at the skills needed by players on the golf course, we need actually two sets of fundamentals.
Because that's our big thing. Our background is being technical teachers and players. I mean, tour players or high-level players. So we've found, for different reasons, Lynn came it more from a teaching perspective, and me from a playing, that we felt that we learned such great fundamentals of the game technically, like awesome, had extremely good teachers, but there's still things missing. So the way we look at it, there are technical fundamentals, and there are what we call more human fundamentals that every golfer needs to play the game of golf. And our wish for the future is that we learn those together, from the beginning.
And it's such an interesting time. I've had this conversation with you and with a lot of other coaches who come at it from a lot of different angles. There's so much information available, and if you just look, for example, at a platform like the one we're on right now, where you can share information in real time with people all over the world. I mean, if you think about your own early career as players or as learners or as teachers, if this resource would have been available, more easily available, and you could learn from so many other coaches in real time like this, the transfer of information is so much quicker now, but it also puts so much more of a premium on being able to sort that information and deal with it emotionally, and that's got to be a part of what you're training your players to do, and also what you're training coaches who come to work with you to learn how to be better coaches to do.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And I often say, you know, when I started as a golf teacher, that's what I was. I was a golf swing teacher, and I was very much a technical teacher. And this kind of information didn't really exist. And, you know, I got interested because people got better swings when they came for lessons with me, but they didn't play better. And so I just think that, you know, after a while, I had to be really honest with myself. It was like, people are spending a lot of money with me, and I supposedly am very successful on the lesson tee giving swing lessons, but people would go out and they didn't really have the skills to play. And I didn't see it, you know, as my responsibility to do that. You know, I was helping them get better technique, hit it farther, you know, learn a new chip shot, that kind of stuff. And it was all well and good, but it was just technical development. It wasn't actually game development.
You know, and for me, it started from being a tour player. Then I went back home to Sweden, where I'm from, and I started helping our national teams and started coaching. So I had to try to figure out, okay, most of these players have their technical teachers at home, and here I'm the coach now, and I've had my experience playing on tour. And I knew what I was missing, getting better feedback what actually happens on the course, because I knew my swing was okay, but something happened that it didn't always show up on the golf course. So I just started watching these players play, and I kept making notes. What are they doing the holes they're playing well, and what's different the holes they're not playing well? And I just started discovering, like, oh my, this is like amazing how much I see if they make a practice swing, or if they don't make a practice swing, and how long time they are over the ball, how they react to shots, all these things. And then it's just started growing from there. Like, there's a whole different area. So many think, like, at first they say, oh, Lynn and Pia don't think technique is important. And that is like so not true, because of course it is, but it's just insufficient. So that's why when we say the human skills, what we mean is, how do you actually manage yourself? Simplified, we would say, how do you manage yourself before a shot, during the shot, after the shot, between shots, so the technique you've learned actually can show up. And those are skills we just think any golfer should learn from the first time they start the game.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, Matt, is that, you know, because our emphasis is on the course coaching, that when COVID hit, actually we started doing FaceTime coaching with players on the course, you know, whereas many said, oh my God, this is a great time now to work on your swing, and we can really dissect your swing with all the new technology, which could be one way to use the technology. But we just used it and took it straight out to the golf course. It was amazing.
Have you found with the proliferation of measurement tools, TrackMan, I mean, you name it, you can measure almost anything. Do you find that competitive players who are coming to you are some of the human skills and emotional skills more stunted than they were maybe 10 years ago? Are they more developed because there are more ways to connect with people on social media and things like that? Well, how do you identify the raw material that you're getting in the form of students compared to a decade ago?
Well, actually, like from what you said, there are three things that becomes really clear. One is, yes, we think we like all the great technology. We feel like from outside, these numbers and facts from the outside. But to be a great golfer on the course, you need to have the experience from inside you. You need to have you need to create a feel and a state and a commitment and all those things without any technology. So we just feel players need even more training to, first-person experience of the game that they did before, because we get so overloaded with the technology. So yes, we found. So that's one. And the second thing we found, because of the speed of everything today, that the players need much more attention training.
They'll get so caught up in their metrics, their TrackMan numbers, or whatever they're measuring. It's okay, but they get so caught up in that becomes a very much an internal focus, and they don't now have a focus to actually play on the course. So like Pia just said, we do a lot of attention training. We call it play box training, which is that how do you focus over the shot for the whole swing, for the whole stroke kind of thing. And back to Pia's point is that with the speed of our lives now, many need to learn how to do that again.
So we've done this test.
If they ever learned to do it in the first place.
So what we tested when we started noticing this, are we going to check this? Even with tour players. So we asked them, we gave them 3 different focuses. It could be simple, okay, feel your grip pressure, or sense the 75% tempo. And we asked them to just make a practice swing to keep the focus of, let's say, constant grip pressure.
So one intention or one feel or one awareness.
And it's amazing that so many realize they lose it in the backswing, or they lose it at the top of the swing, and they can't keep a simple focus for 2 seconds because they haven't trained it. So we just tell them, no matter what they work on, technical or more, sensory focuses, we first need to get back to actually paying attention to whole golf swing or whole putting stroke. So that, I think, happened with the technology and the speed of information. And then the third thing that you said is really interesting, because of everything we can see now on social media, and we can see what everybody else is doing, the other comparison has become greater.
Super heightened.
Yeah. Instead of figuring out what is actually important for me and what I do when I play great golf, it's easy to see what everybody else is doing, and it can get really messy for players.
Yeah.
You're operating as a filter for a player in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a golf swing filter, but it's a self-esteem filter. There's a lot of filters that go into coaching high-level players.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, when Mike Weir came for coaching, he had just read our book, Be a Player. Someone had given it to him, and he actually just reached out and he said, I want to come down and get coaching because I've never looked at the human skills. He goes, I've certainly gone down that path of the other, many paths down the other. And, that's when he came down and we started doing a lot of on-course human skills work with him.
Because he realized, learning more about it, that's what I intuitively used to do, and I happened to win the Masters doing it. And now how do I get back to owning that together with a good technique?
Yeah.
Well,
so it's both.
Let's talk a little bit about that mix, the mix of technical skill, the mix of human skills. Maybe we can talk a little bit about how you define what those human skills are, and how you come up with the right mixture for students, because I'm sure some people need the dial on one side turned a little more, or the dial on the other side turned a little more, and how you make some of those decisions.
Yeah, it's often, we wrote on a piece of paper here to show you, but we often do this in the golf school just to get people to understand that it is the technical skills times human skills that decide how well you're going to play. So we often give an example. Let's say you can have level 1 to 3, how good you are technically, or how good you are to actually manage yourself.
Right.
And let's say there's a player that has a 2 technical skills. So, you know, they know quite a bit. They can hit quite a few shots. They're not like maybe tour level, but they're pretty darn good. But they have never really looked at the human skills. They still know that you know need to pick a shot and get the yardage and you know connect to the target, but it's like 0.5 human skills. So then they play 2 times 0.5 is 1. So it's kind of the player that has such a good swing, but why don't they play better? Type thing. And then
so they play well under what their technical capability is.
Yeah. But then this person plays a match against someone that only has a technical skill level of say 1. Like they know how to chip and putt, but they only have like maybe 1 shot around the greens.
Or maybe they just have 1 ball flight, you know, it's slice. But you know, they keep it in the fairway, that kind of thing.
But for whatever reason, this person has still learned to actually decide on shots they trust, and they learn to like actually stay focused on things under their control. They've learned a few things. So they have a 2 human skill level. So who's going to win every single time? The second one, and it drives the first one absolutely crazy. Like I'm a better player. I hit it further, I hit it better. So we see this all the time.
Yeah.
So what do we want?
Well, I was going to say, and then unfortunately is that the top one there, the one with the 2 technical skill, they just keep going back and working on their swing or working on their technique, which doesn't increase their human skill variable.
It's going to make them more crazy.
Yeah, it makes them. And so this is what's really important because it depends on obviously your customer or your player, the level of play, because like a tour players maybe got a 2.9 technical skill level, right? And so that was kind of like with Mike, he just needed to get, you know, he has a lot of great technical skills. He's, you know, works with Mark Blackburn as well, still on his technical skills, but he needed to up that human skill number. But I'll just say, let's say we get a 20 handicap who comes and they go, yeah, but I need better technique. I need to learn more shots. That's true. But now how much time do you have to practice, to make changes, to develop? And now we've got to make a choice. Where's your biggest ROI based on the amount of time you have? And so that always, we have to have that really honest conversation with people.
And the second thing is like, we don't think you know yet how good you are till you get the human skills up to baseline.
Right.
And let's like check that out and see where you're at, because many people's swingings improve. But anyway, so that equation has worked well for us. And what our goal for the future, the super goal for the future, is of course 3 times 3.
Yeah.
So who are going to be the players in the future to have the willingness to go for 3 times 3? And I think then that's where the 54 is going to be. We haven't even seen that. The possibilities of it is like so exciting.
Well, I number one, I hope it's one of my daughters. Well, I guess we'll find out. But number 2, I just wanted to chime in here and say that for everyone who's watching, there's a bar on the right side of your screen where you can submit questions, and they'll come through to me. And as we move along here, we'll build up a bank of questions to ask. And do you find that the real estate available to you out in front for elite players, when you talk about human skills, it feels like there's more real estate there and more room for improvement, and the sophisticated players understand that improving that the ROI you just talked about, the return on investment. I mean, the reality of the difference in ball hitting skills at the elite level is pretty small, but there is this space in the human side of the game where you can pick up more ground and probably see more changes in score by putting your work there.
Yeah. You know, that's
absolutely.
You know, it happened to us 4 years ago when we started helping Area Utanagan. I mean, when she just got 0.3% more on the human skills, like her natural talent, we just started blossoming. So, of course, but we just wish for the future. We think we would like all golfers and all coaches in the future to have the opportunity to build just a broader baseline of skills. So, you know, because this belongs to any of them. And when you go back and you talk any of the great players through the history of times, they have done these things. But now, because of the science we know about the human performance and human development, we know all the science behind it, we can make it more explicit skills for any golfer to learn. So that we just don't think it should be for the few. We just think it's more visible to look at my fitness number, my technical numbers. It's like I see it, it's measurable. But sometimes there's human skills, because they aren't measurable in the same way. They don't get a high enough priority, we think.
I mean, you can't measure, there isn't a metric for trust, but it's really important to like every shot. You know, you have to trust your decision, you have to trust your club, you have to trust your swing, you have to trust yourself. You know, we can measure brain waves, but we can't measure like trust. But like a person can, if you give them good exercises to do, they can on a subjective level, you know, dial that in. And because they're the only ones experiencing it, it's a first person experience. So they need to actually get coaching where they're able to go inward and check that out, you know. So that's, anyway, I was going to say this, just on that note, is that like, this is quite a few years ago, but we had 3 young mini tour guys that came for coaching, and we said, okay, this next tournament was a local tournament here in Phoenix.
They had great swings, and they were very fit.
And they were like super fit. And we said, okay, this next tournament, all we want you to do is keep your subjective measurement, but how many shots do you decide and commit to? And you totally stay committed to it.
To the end of the swing.
Yeah. And then come back and let's talk about it after the tournament. And they all came back.
Yeah, and they averaged about 40%. It's like,
you know, it's
40%
like,
of the shot.
And we're like, and you want to play the PGA Tour, so we've got some work to do here.
Because like as a professional player, we think there's no reason not to learn to get close to 100%, because we know we actually commit to the shot I choose. I hit more good shots, and misses get tighter. So it doesn't matter if they get more fit or they learn more shot if they don't learn the skill of committing to what they're deciding. So those kind of things are kind of important, we think.
But that's a great way to get into kind of discussing what an intake evaluation looks like when you're actually going to measure some of these human skills with a aspiring college player, aspiring tour player that comes to see you. How do you measure some of those human skills? Are there specific tests you use? Are there what's the protocol to? I mean, what are some of those specific skills, and how do you measure them?
Well, no, it comes to first we teach them the baseline knowing about what we call the think box, play box, memory box, because they need to understand what it is, and then do exercises on the course for them to get a feel of how they're doing with them. But even before that, we always start with them, and they need to start doing an inventory of what do they actually do when they play well.
Yeah.
And
Well, and again, that we always have them just start with that. So those who are listening in, we'd have you all just write down 3 things you do, you know you do when you play well, to start being self-referencing, because maybe you're already doing some things well, but you're not doing them as consistently as you could. And that was kind of like, again, I'll go back to Mike Weir. We just had to do a lot of helping him remember how he got into good state on the golf course.
Yes, and he realized, like, wow, it's when I see the ball flight and things like it.
But I was just going to say, Matt, to your question, I mean, so we'll look at, we already said this earlier, but we'll look at those skills that are needed before the shot, the skills needed during the shot, we call that think box and play box, and then the memory box, the skill needed post-shot reaction and understanding the science of that, and then the skills needed between shots. And then we think, 3 human skills that every golfer needs to do maintenance on and to calibrate are balance, tempo, and tension awareness. So, I mean, we don't do metrics on those with players when they come for coaching, but we give them like the whole package and understanding that these are all skills you're going to need. And then we go out on the course and we start to look at, okay, where are they, where maybe do they already, what do they already do well? Mm-hmm. Where are they already proficient? And where are their weak links with those things?
Yeah, exactly. But I would say in general that the first place we go to is what we call the play box. It's the time and space when you're actually swinging or putting. So we start there making sure they actually are paying attention to something useful and that they can pay attention for the whole motion, because that is like the moment of truth. So if they can't go, and also making sure that they're not still preparing, thinking while they're making their swingers or strokes. So we always check up on that they have gone from thinking to sensing, and that they can stay with a focus throughout the whole motion. That, you know, no matter what handicap level, we go there, because if they're not doing that, the other skills are not really going to matter anyways. Yeah.
What are some of the most common, or what is the most common human skill short circuit that you see? I mean, it might be. I mean, obviously, it's difficult to put yourself in the shoes of people that you don't work with. But you know, if you're watching an event as a spectator, but at the elite level, if someone makes a mistake on the approach shot on the 18th hole, that is clearly a human skill mistake. What is the most common short circuit, do you think, for the elite player?
I mean, you know, a couple of things. One thing is that the time in the play box can get a couple of seconds longer because it's so important, and then they start thinking and they start missing the shot, because they might be like, oh, do I have enough club, you know, no.
Or I'm going to take more time, so I'm really ready.
Exactly. So that can happen, and then, you know, but the physical manifestations of sometimes often. So it's very often that some tension creeps in, like upper body or jaw. It's like, it's amazing, even for all level players, when we go from the golf school, we've been on the range and talking, and then we go to the golf school in the afternoon, and it's like, woo, suddenly we're on the golf course, it means something, and things start happening. So very often we see tempo and tension thing happens, or something happening in the play box, and often it is that they start thinking or get over preparing and things like that.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mentioned her earlier, but Monica Vaughn said, this is the coach at University of Oregon who shot the 58 last week. But she said, you know, she's had yips in putting, I mean, pretty much her whole life, like in high school, then in college at Arizona State, and she won the NCAA. So, I mean, she's a good player and she's worked through that. But all she did was just minimize her routine. And she said it's amazing, like the yips have totally gone away.
So it's less cognitive thinking.
Yeah. So that, you know, I mean, that's one. And I'll just say, so often shortening and condensing and getting only what's essential in the routine cleaned up. And I want to say this for those who are listening in. With the junior golfers that we have coming Division 54, that's probably the one thing we have to clean up the most, is that they have these like arduous, long information gathering routines. And I'm like, there's no way this is going to be sustainable for performance. I mean, there's no way. You know,
plus no one will ever want to play with you ever again.
And, you know, we know you want to play great college golf or play tour golf someday, but we got to clean this up.
Yeah, because we just know it. It's not, they can't do it for it. I mean, obviously for pace of play and things like that is very important, but for performance reasons, it's like, in all the science and decision making, we know that we need, you know, some information, but we need to have room for some instinct and intuition there too, and simplify things.
Do you think there are some outlier types like Bryson DeChambeau, for example, where data is a comfort, where that exhausting pre-shot routine provides him with the pattern or the routine that makes him feel better about the shot he's going to hit?
Absolutely. He's able, I don't think he could commit to it if he didn't have all that. You know, I mean, that's how he's just kind of wired and set up, and it makes him feel like he's more in control, and therefore he can commit. But for many, it's just they're doing it because they think they're supposed to do it.
Or they saw Bryson do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I must say, we said many too that say, well, I need to do all these things, otherwise I can't play well. But then we asked them, have you tried to do a little less to see maybe if you get less tired and you can stay focused for a whole tournament? Right. They say no. So very many of them actually, when we still, even though they are that kind of a player, we still have them, let's explore, because we want players to explore more, not just be stuck. But explore and see if I still can feel as good, even better, doing a little less, let's go for that instead. So even if we see some are outliers, but even if some say they're outliers and they have never explored other options, that's not good enough. So,
You know, and Bryson is such a fun example because I know we've spoken before about how important being the master of variability is, and Bryson's such an interesting case because if you watch him as an observer and don't understand the why behind what he's doing, it looks like he's trying to eliminate as much variability as he can, and that's such a fun sort of intersection. You know, being the adaptable person who can deal with adversity on a golf course while also watching someone try to take every variable and eliminate it as much as possible.
Yeah, and what I think with this tool is so important and so great that we have different top players, because there isn't one way to play great golf. There's so many different ways of playing great golf. So that's why we feel it's really important for up and coming golfers to explore choices, because just because they admire a tour player doesn't mean it's going to work for them. So it's having the courage to check things out and gather, how am I unique as a golfer? Am I more of a field player? Am I more logical type player? I mean, what are the things, and really play around with it, and that you do best on the golf course.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I won't say who the player was, but it was an LPGA player, and we were at the women's first major, and she had the green book out, and she had a really bad putting round. And it was her first round of the tournament, but when we came in on Thursday afternoon and we were debriefing around, we were like, you know, what was going on? Like, you were like looking in the green book, and you had your caddy looking.
She never does it normally.
And yeah, it was like a new thing, and we're like, you know, we didn't see that in the practice rounds. You know, what was going on? And she's like, well, you know, I wanted to putt well. Like, this whole tournament in Palm Springs is all about putting. So I thought it would help me putt better. We're like, well, did it? And she's like, no, in fact, I don't like it, not at all.
It is so funny. She said, why didn't you take it from me? I said, well, we're not allowed to. You know,
So are you like the dietitian who watches the person eat a McDonald's Happy Meal, and you immediately know something's going terribly wrong when you watch these things unfold at a tournament?
Right. Yeah, a little bit. Well, I mean, that's something we do with the tour players. I mean, we always want to see them play in competition and see what's the real deal out there.
Yeah, and often the best thing, you know, we want to see how they play really, really well, but it's really good when we see them really mess up too, and learning how do you to get in your own way, because all of us are going to mess up. When I can start to learn, like, when I mess up, I get too tight, or when I mess up, tempo changes. When I mess up, I start over preparing. It's really important to know, because next time you're in that situation, you know kind of what tools to do to manage yourself.
So so the mistake doesn't manifest in multiple holes of bad play or multiple rounds of bad play. You can pull it out.
Oh yeah, and it's the best thing is, like, when it has happened to you, to really check that out, and then next time you're in the same position, knowing, you know, you don't try to do the same you did on Thursday morning. You know, under pressure, I changed, everybody changed, but how I need to learn how I change so I can deal with it differently.
Aren't you also turning on a different level of awareness for the player that lets them assess themselves more accurately after a round or after a tournament? I mean, that must make your practice and your preparation more efficient, because you have better source information to base your efforts upon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, this was an LPGA player a few years back, but she was into keeping very detailed stats. And then this is what she said. She said, you know, with all these stats I'm keeping, I find that when I go out to play, I start evaluating myself during the round relative to stats, and I'm not really playing. You know, I'm just playing stats. So we said, okay, you know, let your caddy do the stats. And then when you come in, the first thing you're going to do is what we call a good, better, how. And that's just a more general evaluation. What did you do well during the round? What could you do better? And then how are you going to do it? And you have to have a minimum of 3 goods to 1 better. And that how needs to be like, is it something you need to do post round, or maybe you don't need to do anything at all, or, you know, maybe it's something you're going to do in the next week. But anyway, and then she would maybe look at her stats. And it was amazing how going with a more general evaluation, self-assessment, versus looking at the stats, mean, it was remarkable what happened to her game.
Yeah. She just waited with the stats till after tournaments and things like that.
Yeah.
How long does that process? I mean, it's hard to generalize, but when you have an elite player come to you and you start to grow this human side of the equation for a player, how long does the process take for being in the correct box for the time, you know, in your round? But I mean, does it become second nature right away? Does it take a lot of training? Does it take years? How long does the process take?
Well, the reason I'm laughing is that we've had many players who came and then went and won the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So that like they just a couple things clicked and they're able to
Right.
put it in the game and boom, go out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened a lot actually.
But you do have to continue. It's like any part of your game though. You do have to practice it and continue to practice it.
Yeah. This can't just be a concept or an abstract idea. It's actually a trainable skill.
So when it comes to, most players know, if they work on fitness, they know what to do in the gym. They have their exercise things to do, and technically most know the drills to do and all of that. But when it comes to this, what we just name them the human skills of the game, they become often too vague and just talked about. So that's why we spend the last 10, 15 years just creating exercises, things to do, so they can become as real and trainable as technical or physical skills.
Real maintenance.
Yeah, real maintenance.
Right. Can you give an example of one of the training regimens? Just one.
It can be so simple. Okay, can you make 5 swings finishing in balance, feet together, 5 swings on the right foot, 5 swings on the left foot, and finish in balance. Like, can you do it or can you not do it? I mean, that's like, it's a balance checkup.
Right.
Or can you go out and play, 9 holes, 3 holes, 6 holes, you pick the number, and in your post-shot reactions in your memory box, can you just be neutral? Not good or bad, not positive or negative, just neutral, and just see if you can do that with an on-course skill.
There are hundreds of ways, and so we always say, when it comes to practice, and many players say, what should I do it? And we tell them a starting template is to divide the practice in thirds. So if I have an hour to practice, I do 20 minutes my technical drills, then 20 minutes of drills that addresses the human skills, and then 20 minutes that goes more simulation, game-like situations. And then you start having a more good blend of practice sessions, because those that go like, I'll get to the other things when my technique is good.
Or when I hit my metrics or my numbers.
But that's not going to work. Because
but that's actually a good point and a good question, which is if I were to come and eavesdrop on one of your sessions with a major championship winning player, and I compared that session with a 20 handicapper, the flavor of the work that you gave those players, or the assignments that you gave them, or the maintenance work that they needed on the human side, would those maintenance assignments, so to speak, be very different? Would it just be different in a matter of degree, or would those be fundamentally different experiences that I watched?
When they actually come, many even of the tour players come to our golf schools with our real golfers that we call the amateur golfers. So they learn it, they do the same exercise and do the same things. But from the tour players, we can take them to more advanced levels of all the exercises. But usually when we start out, they're all at the same level, because they too need to keep it focused till the end of the swing. They too need to be able to manage their tempo and be in charge of the tempo instead of the tempo running them, for example. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we'll change them up a bit depending on their skill level. This will happen. We'll have like a set of exercises, and we'll have a 25 handicap say, I can't hit a draw. Well, okay, so then this exercise, you're not going to try to do that, try to hit a draw. But yeah, so we'll just change up the exercises so that it's depending on their skill level.
Yeah, or age level.
Or age level. Yeah.
And you made a great point a little earlier in this conversation about junior players, and it's got to be the goal for this to be able to deliver these skills to an emerging player, someone who's learning the game, you learn these skills as you're beginning, just as if you would learn how to hold it, just as if you would learn how to make a backswing, where you can develop all these skills all the way along your golf journey, not just have to get them implanted when you're a 48-year-old like I am.
Exactly. That's our big wish for all of us, to create synergy as all these teachers and coaches around the world. That's like, do it, because we come so far and we know so much more, and we totally feel that this side of all the skills you need to play the game can be lifted up together with all the advancement of technology that we have.
Yeah, and we often say we don't think the human skills should be seen as an intervention, but many, that's how it's, they get only so far, and then they have to, like, oh my God, address the other. But to see them, that they develop in parallel, especially with the young players. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
One aspect of the tour coaching experience that's always so interesting to me is the psychological component of keeping a player focused on positive things, on possibilities, keeping players attuned to what they could be doing well, as opposed to obsessing about the pieces of their game that they are not so good at. Could you talk a little bit about how to tune an elite player to be more aware of the positive things that could be happening with their game, as opposed to looking at the shot they might have missed, the score that they didn't shoot?
Yeah. It's interesting. I just last few months asked the players that we coach to become number 1 and number 2 in the world about what is the most challenging thing of being so good. And one thing they all mention is that there's so much more critical comments and so much like, why didn't you win again, or why isn't this happening? So that negativity bias,
right,
can become greater and greater the better you are. So,
and when Pia speaks of the negativity bias, so we often ask golfers, if you hit 3 good drives or 3 bad drives, which do you remember? And they always say, oh, the 3 bad ones. And, or you come in and you talk about that one putt I missed versus you made a ton of putts, right? So,
pain avoidance.
And so there's been research that the brain actually has a negativity bias, in that it remembers negative events stronger, faster, deeper than positive events. And that mechanism in the brain is there for survival. But as a golfer, it's still operating when we're evaluating our golf games.
Yeah. So to your point there, it becomes really, really important that the player first, we want them to be in charge, that they understand this, so they know that they need to create a habit every day to pay attention to all the things they do well. And because they are going to be an environment with the criticism and people be negative, so they, and hopefully their support team, are very aware of this, and that they never let go of spending enough attention and identifying all the things that is going well, both technically and all the other playing skills, the human skills. And then, look at, if the 1 or 2 things that can be better, what is that? But you need to be very, very careful, because it's so easy that the negative comments from yourself or what you see in social media and around you can take players down. And we can see that a lot.
Yes.
And do you find also that elite athletes have unique personality traits, and those personality traits partially make them as wonderful at what they're doing as they are, but they also provide some more of this vulnerability that we're talking about, because some of the control mechanisms that a regular civilian might develop in real life, someone who's been kind of kept away from that life, they might not have developed that as well.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And we've been around and coached many really, really great players, and they're great at a very young age. And there always becomes a few years that are very, very critical in the early 20s or so to be able to catch up without ever having had the normal life at that age. So it becomes a very, very delicate thing for us to support those players.
But really, aren't you helping them develop human skills that are useful off the golf course too? I mean, those human skills are universal. They're not just for when you're walking on a beautiful green piece of property.
we think it's really important for all of us coaches to have our own beliefs or philosophy and be clear on that. And for us, it's always been that we want to develop human performance, but also human development. And it has no point for us to be a great golfer if you're miserable as a human being. It's not worth it.
Or if you're stunt that development as a human being in society with other people, or even with yourself. You know, we want it to be a very positive human development. And so, I mean, these human skills are as well as life skills.
Yeah.
You know?
And we just know it for a sustainable golf career, you're going to want it. Otherwise, you're going to burn out, or you're going to start not liking golf, or you're going to get other challenges. So we think it's important just for sports in general to be a great thing to get into. But we also know for the individual player, we know for them to stay in the game and stay doing it, you're going to need it, because you're a human being who play the game of golf, not the golfer who happen to be a human being. And you know, we can't lose sight of that.
And those are such valuable skills to transmit to other coaches, younger coaches who are coming to try to learn how to do the coaching element more successfully, and to be able to have some of those more complete relationships with students. I mean, that's number one, it's got to be more satisfying, and number two, you're keeping longer term relationships with students, I would think.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
And you know, one of our favorite things is too, when we have the golf schools, and we can get, you know, for example, maybe it's a 60-year-old man who's played golf his entire life and he's ready to quit. We get many of those. This is my last resort. I've been to everybody, I've tried everything.
Last resort, literally and figuratively, out of this beautiful place.
But nothing gives us greater satisfaction than when we can help those golfers find the love of the game back, and find why they like golf, and find a way of going about golf that fits them and it's enjoyable for them. And that's just magic. I mean, it's probably more magic than helping a player win a big tournament.
I just tell a quick story, but we had a guy who came to the golf school, and he was a curmudgeon of the highest order. And so when we talked about the negativity bias, he said, "Oh, ladies, I don't have a 3-to-1 negativity bias. I have a 10-to-1 negativity bias." He said, I captained a submarine, and he said, as captain of the submarine, and he said every week we had to find a minimum of 10 to 15 things wrong with the ship, because we had to stay ahead of, you know, what might happen.
So he did that for every golf shot.
Yeah. So he said, I'm not going to be able to turn this thing around.
No.
And he goes, listen, I get the theory, I understand. He said, but like, you know, I'm just going to be miserable after the shot. So we're like, okay. But the interesting thing, I mean, when he left, I mean, it was a sincere conversation in that he didn't really think he could change this. And he went home, and we gave him things to do, practice plans to do around his memory box and shifting this. And like, I don't know, it was maybe 2-3 weeks later, we get an email, he'd had his lowest score ever. So, you know, those are the kind of things you go,
did he finish the email by saying, "And I still missed the 3-footer on the last hole. It could have been even better."
But and I think it is because it went beyond just talking about it, but he had concrete exercises that he promised, I'm going to actually do them. I mean, one could be just like, because he was so negative, like, okay, you're going to play 9 holes, and you can say one good thing after every shot, no matter what. Like, I finished a balance, the ball went forward. I don't know, anything.
Balls on green grass.
I know, just to try it. And he couldn't do it at first. But he said, you know, I started being able to do it, and then he could take steps from there, and actually realized had a more real reaction to shots, and he could differentiate. We often say that you need to differentiate from great shots to good shots to good enough shots to not good. And as a golfer, you need to be able to be, you know, some degree of pleased with good enough to good to great. Otherwise, the game is going to drive you crazy.
Do you see a challenging dynamic sometimes between elite junior players and parents when it comes to managing some of these human skills that we're talking about, where maybe the parent is manifesting or is stunting some of these human skills that it would be better for the junior player to develop?
In a word, yes.
Yes. Yeah. So 15 years ago, we wrote a booklet called Golf Parent for the Future that addresses this, and it's been translated, I think, to 12 languages now. But we are creating a new remote training tool for parents to support people around that. But the answer is yes. But what we have found out, most parents have good intentions. They're thinking what they're doing is going to help them. So if we can just train them like a little bit as a coach, just a little bit, but understand the science of performance, most parents are very willing to just revisit a little bit how they communicate with their children or how they evaluate what is happening. So we want to go for and help them with that.
Yeah, I mean, this was a few years back, but there was a Korean player and her parents were there every tournament, every practice, and she said, they love me and they're really supporting, but I feel so much pressure. So we did kind of a little meeting and brought in her agent, and her agent did the translation, and we gave them this little booklet, Golf Parent for the Future. It had been translated to Korean, and they realized that maybe they would best help their daughter by going home to Korea. So they went home to Korea, and then this player won. But it was just, again, like, not that they have to completely remove themselves from the, by going home, but they realized that they couldn't not fold their arms when they saw their daughter miss the putt. They realized that they couldn't behave that way.
Oh, and the game is so beautiful because every golfer, when you play, you're alone. It's you with you. You're the only one who can make the swings or the strokes. You're the only one who can make decisions. You're the only one who can stay focused. So every golfer needs to learn to actually be by themselves and own their games. So that's why in our game it's not going to work if other people take too much ownership of it. They're never going to be as good as they could be, because you need to learn to be the CEO of your own golf game. And so that's the way our game is set up. We need to coach, and everybody around us need to find ways so they can be their own best coaches.
Yeah, I mean, you can't want it more than your kid does, or your coach does, or I mean, that's or you as the parent, you can't want it more than your kid does. Excuse me, that doesn't work. We got some really interesting questions that have come in. One of them is, do you use performance games with your players to try to put them under stress, to replicate the stress of a tournament situation?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do that.
Yeah,
we think it's
very
really
much so. And have really, I mean, for many years to put them under simulated conditions, for sure.
And we just had with the tour player the other day, because she still I'm getting so bugged by people moving or flies coming and all of that. So we were out on the golf course and we were throwing tees at her and clapping. And I mean, we need, train those things that really gets you. So absolutely, yes. I mean, first they need to learn some of these skills, how to manage themselves, but then right away get in performance practice. Absolutely.
I mean, this was a European, he played the Challenge Tour. And so he'd come close to winning a couple of times. And so, but he didn't win, because basically on Sunday he would get disturbed by the crowd, and that he knew he was near the lead and there was more people there watching him play on Sunday. So we said to him, this next tournament that you go to play in, like, because he liked to go to the end of the range, put his headset on, get in his own little world, that whole thing. We said, we want you to put your bag in the middle of the range next to a guy from Spain that talks too much, and like learn to deal with it. Like, you've got to learn to deal with all the distractions that are going to accompany being in the lead on Sunday.
So he did that for like a couple of weeks, and then he was close to the lead again, and he pulled it off because he trained the real situation.
Well, I can tell you, having been stuck inside mostly for the COVID time since March with 3 girls, 11, 8, and 6, I have trained myself to be much better and more creative being surrounded by chitter chatter than I was in March. So it works in real life. I've got another great question here. Have you suggested meditation as an option for some players to develop some of these human skills?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Both of us meditate, and I've meditated for more than 25 years, and I do it a couple of times a day. So for me, it's had great benefits. And we we call it for many it's just more brain training and being in charge of your mind. So like, for example, in golf, you need to learn to pay attention and stay focused for your swing and strokes. That's kind of a meditation. So it's kind of built into our game. How can you create a certain state and get away from thinking and just sensing something? So we bring it up that is part of the game, and very many feel like, well, I need more training because my brain is too busy or I can't get away from thinking. So we have many versions. So you can do something for 1 minute a day or 3 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day. And the whole point is just to learn to be more in charge of my brain waves or where I'm at and managing myself. And then some like to do, more formal meditation. We think it's fine, but it's like, it's all about what I need to manage my own mind. And me personally, I think it's terrific, and we have many players who like to do it too.
Yeah, I mean, and again, depending on the player, we might not, like Pia said, we might not even call it meditation. We might just call it fitness training, and then make it scalable so that, depending on their level of engagement or how much busyness they really have, something that they can do and be successful with. But if you take somebody and you say, you got to sit here for an hour and meditate, and they can't even do it for 20 seconds. No. You're not going to be successful with it. So.
No, because anyone who start, we might just be on the range and we say, okay, for 1 minute now, can you just listen to the sound of nature? And if you start thinking,
or having a conversation in your head,
then just listen to the birds or the trees or the mower, and they realize like, wow, this is really good to practice, that I can actually help myself not to think so much, and I can listen to the nature, or I can look at the golf ball without being distracted, or I can put my hands on the club and feel the fingers on my club, and can I keep that sensation for a minute without being distracted? So in that way, it's more like focus training too.
Yeah.
I mean, one way I knew way back when we started doing stories together 15 years ago that this was new stuff and new territory is how difficult some of the things are that you talk about to photograph. When we're trying to do a concrete instruction article for Golf Digest, these are beautiful thoughts, and they're these amazing concrete things you can do with your mind, but they're difficult to photograph. So that's with video though, we're getting much better now. We can make videos and do a lot more dynamic things. Another great question. How do you change the mix of technical coaching versus human coaching for high handicap players? Do you have to start with the technical coaching more with a beginning player, or is the balance still pretty equal at that point?
Why is still balanced? Because let's say they're going to learn just about how to hold on to the golf club. So they're going to learn that, but they're still going to hit some shots. So then we'll help them. Can you feel it instead of thinking about it? So we right away help them separate thinking and learning about it from performing it. And that could happen from the first lesson. Or how you best react to a shot. That's best learned at the first lesson too. So our preference is to bring it in to some degree from the beginning.
Yeah, and again, this is our preference that we've seen. A more efficient development is get them on the golf course straight away. So you're not working on these technical skills out of context, on the range all the time, that you take them to the golf course straight away. And so then the technical and the human skills are in play on the golf course straight away with all the training.
Yeah, and it could be like they get to have one try, and if they whiff it, we just move it down close to the green. But they get the feeling of being a golfer, so they understand all the skills going to learn, that they actually have some context why you need to learn them. So getting the feel of being a golfer, even though obviously they're not going to hit every shot, but just getting the sense of it. Yeah. So then, if we go back to practice area, they realize practice area is not real golf, but I know where it belongs to the game of golf.
Well, I could tell you, like every time we're together, the time flies by, because we could talk about this for hours and hours, and I always enjoy it. The last thing I wanted to ask you before we finish up here with our hour is, you've called your program Coaching for the Future for years and years. How are we closer to the future now? I mean, can you see after generations of this going through into the coaching world and out into players, are we closer to the future, or are we still pretty far away from the future?
I'll let you answer first.
Well, yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think we've made progress. So we're closer to the future, but we still have a ways to go. And I just say that because, again, it goes back to everybody's so enamored with measuring things now with their golf swings, and they can measure things with their golf swings, that they tend to ignore these pieces that need to get trained to play on a golf course.
Yeah. But I definitely do. I feel extraordinary difference in interest, and many teachers and coaches that come to us and realize, for the future, I want to actually expand my fundamentals of what I'm doing. So the number of, because we think every golf club in the world needs to have players that are more, what we call not only swing teachers that we're good, but coaches, but they're game or golf coaches, where you put it all together. So that we see a big difference in the interest of that. And obviously we would like it to go faster, and we think all PGA or LPGA education should include more of that from the beginning, but it's going in the right direction.
Fantastic. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, and I'm hoping for all these restrictions to end so that I could see you live pretty soon.
Yeah, I will.
I want to say too that for the people watching, same time tomorrow, Nick Faldo is the next guest in the series of these webinars, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else is on the menu from great presenters, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.